Hi guys, Arnold Gelderloon here with a video. It's been a while since I have made a video. The reason for that is I don't want to make videos just for the sake of making videos. I want to make videos on topics that I really feel passionate about or that I'm interested in. I don't want making videos to become a job or a drag for me. It needs to be something that I am really interested in. One of the things is the new Roland KC keyboard amp series that they just launched. The original series was launched back in 2010, so that batch they had on the market for the last 17 years, and it is high time that they have that they update or upgrade the series of amps. However, I am a bit disappointed in what they've done, and you'll see that as it's evident in the comparison between this new line of KC amps and the old line of KC amps, which is exactly what this video is about, comparing this line against the previous line. So here we go. Roland has updated each and every item in the series, or every amp that they have in the series of keyboard amps. They had the KC 60, 150, 350, 550, 880, and the 110, which was you had the option to operate it with batteries. So the KC60, they matched up with the KC80. The 150 went to 200, 350, 400, etc., etc., etc. As you can see on the screen. So we'll go through each of these updates and see whether it's actually worth selling your old keyboard amp and upgrading to the new one. We're going to start with the KC60 versus the KC80. The KC60 was the entry line keyboard amp in this KC series of amps. It had a 3-channel mixing keyboard amplifier, and there you can see all the channels. It had a 2-band EQ, your master volume, which was, this was something that I didn't like. The fact that you only had one volume knob for the sort of front of house and the headphones out as well. But be that as it may, it is what it is. Then they had here the subwoofer out, which was for you to use a subwoofer with this amp. They launched the KCW1, if I'm not mistaken, which we're also going to talk about further down the line, which you could buy to use with the keyboard amp to give you that low end, the nice bottom bass and punchy low ends. You also had a line out, so you could send a mono signal to something else. You had an aux in, so you could plug in your iPad, your tablet, etc., via the aux ins. And then you had your channel inputs, channel 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 3. Channel 1 has an XLR input as well, to plug in a microphone into here as well. The KC880 is exactly the same thing. 1, 2, 3 channels, 2-band equalizer, with one volume knob controlling both the headphone out and the main outs. If you look at the inputs, it's exactly the same inputs and outputs as well. There's one sub out, one mono line out, you get your aux in, and then you get your channel 1, 2, and 3, and channel 1 has the XLR input as well. So for me, this wasn't a real upgrade in terms of features, because the inputs and outputs was exactly the same, and there wasn't really there isn't really much to talk about. They increased the power from 40 watts to 50 watts, and the weight has been reduced by 1 kilogram, from 13.5 to 12.5 as well. I don't know. Only 10 watts increase with a 1 kilogram drop in weight. I'm not sure. But let's go through the full series, and then we take it from there. I've put in there the improved sound quality because I haven't been able to find one in a store to put it through the test. So that's why there's a question mark around it. I have no idea what the sound quality is on the new series, whether it's improved or not. Let's go to the next batch. Next, we have the KC150 versus upgraded to the KC200. And this is a 4-channel mixing amp, and I have to say that's one of the things that I like about the KC series of amps, the fact that it has a mixer built into it, and a 3 or 4-channel mixer for that matter as well. It's not as it doesn't have as much inputs that you would like a 12 or 16 channel mixer, for example, but it has the basics, so you could probably get a small band fit into this amp as well. So the KC150 has 4 channels, 2-band EQ, 1 volume knob for both headphones and the master, and the input outputs is exactly the same as the previous one, which was the KC60. So you can see the sub out, again, mono line out, aux in, and then you have your 4 channels with the first channel having a XLR input as well. The KC200 is exactly the same, sub out, line output, mono, aux in with your 4 channel inputs, with the first channel being an XLR input as well. They increase the power, and in my opinion, this is the most gain that in any of the series of these amps, and you'll see that in the rest of the video. 65 watts up to 100 watts, and dropping the weight from 15.5 to 15 Ks. Again, no idea about the sound quality. But going from 65 watts to 100 watts, that's maybe worth it. That's worth it. The next up in the line, we have the KC350, which has been upgraded to the KC400. Again, 4-channel mixing amp. So you have your 1, 2, 3, 4 channels. Here we have separate phone volume, which is absolutely nice. An interesting thing on channel 4 as well. Channel 4 has this knob in addition to its volume knob. It has this knobs where you can choose to have channel 4 only go through the headphones, only to the main outs, or a combination of the two, which is what I love. A guy like me, for the way that I perform. The reason I say that, I normally put my clicks and cues through here. So my metronome and my cues are put through my band, and I can have this routed separately to a headphone amp, which we only hear. That's a very, very nice feature on this amp, and I use it extensively. Here we also see the equalizer going from a 2-band equalizer to a 3-band EQ. Very, very nice. It's not the best, but for this type of amp, 3-band EQ, very, very nice. And then we have the main volume as well. Also, here we see for the first time we have a stereo link. Now, the previous models only had a mono out, so you're sending exactly the same signal that you have through this amp. If I can go back. So exactly the same signal that you have going from this amp, you're just sending to another amp. With the KC350, you now have the stereo link where you can actually have it operate as a full stereo one. So if you have 2 KC350s, you can now set plug out, send out the right channel, for example, to another KC350, which will then give you the true left and right outputs as you would normally find in a stereo output. This is a very nice feature, the stereo link. The sub out, again, which you could send to the KCW1, which we're going to talk about later on in the video as well. And then you have your aux in as well. Here's actually a demonstration of the stereo link, which I talked about here. The KC400, exactly the same, channel 1, 2, 3, 4, with the nice function on channel 4, which I mentioned here, where you can send specifically this signal only to your headphones, or headphones and main outs, etc., etc. A nice additional feature that they've added in the KC400 is the separate aux in volume control. Previously on the KC350, you would have to control the volume on the actual device that you had plugged in, like your phone, tablet, MacBook, or whatever it is. You would have to control the volume on there. With the KC400, they have given us an extra aux in separate control, which I think is a nice touch. It's great. Separate headphone control, again 3-band EQ, with the master volume as well. With the KC350, let me just see if we had it on the KC150. No, we did not. With the KC350, this button is absolutely magic. It's called the shape button. And what it does, it enhances the sound of whatever's going through at the main outs. I have a KC350, and when I push this button, it gives me better definition on the bottom end and the high frequencies. So it sort of emphasizes that, which gives you more clarity across your frequency range that you have coming out your main outs. I absolutely love this feature. I don't use it every time, all the time. It depends on the venue and what I need the amp to do at that particular point in time. So I don't use it all the time, but it's a very, very good feature to have. And then you just have your main volume control as well. Exactly the same I/O. You have your stereo link, where you can hook up another KC400 and actually have that true stereo sound left and right. You have your sub out as well, and then you have phones out as well, which instead of putting it on top of the amp, they have now put it at the back. Doesn't matter really to me. On the aux channel, they have now included an 1/8-inch stereo input as well, which I think is a nice touch. Not so much, Apple dropped the headphone jack, so yeah, that's another discussion. But they've included the 1/8-inch input as well, which I thought was a nice touch. So the difference is 30 watts worth of power increase. They went from 120 on the KC350 to 150 on the KC400. And then they dropped the weight as well with 2.5 Ks. Again, no idea about the sound quality. Next in the range, we have the KC550 being upgraded to the KC600. Not much change here from the KC350. You have your 1, 2, 3, 4 channel inputs with exactly the same feature on channel 4. The phones out as well, 3-band EQ. You have your shape button and your main volume control, exactly the same stereo link, the sub out, and the aux input as well. On the KC600, they did exactly the same. 1, 2, 3, 4 channel input controls, your aux in, volume control, which you now have, your headphone out, volume control, 3-band EQ, your shape button, and your main outs as well. What's important to note here with the KC550 is that they've now included the balanced outs as well. As you can see here, as opposed to coming from the KC350 and KC400, with the KC550 and the KC600, Roland included the balanced outs as well, which I think was a nice touch, especially for an amp that is supposed to carry what this thing is supposed to carry. I've seen guys gig a whole band putting the bass, guitar, drums, keyboards, guitars, everything through here, and it absolutely works. This thing is a beast. The only thing that I don't like about this amp is that it is so heavy. But they dropped the weight from 34 Ks to 29 Ks, which I like. The 20 watt increase, yeah, it is an increase, but 20 watts, it's yeah. I'm not going to say anything more on that. And then last in the line, top of the line, is the KC880 that went now to the KC990. The I/O is exactly the same, not much change there. Also the balanced outputs, it's exactly the same as the KC880 and the KC550. The only thing is now you have 320 watts, which is 160, 160 on these two. So you have 160 there, 160 there, which gives you the 320. No improvement on the wattage. Nothing, which I think is silly. Why would you make a new amp and not increase the wattage or the power? That just doesn't make sense to me. And only dropping the weight from 44Ks to 42Ks, that doesn't make sense. You have essentially a newer, and I don't have any idea on the pricing yet, but I'm assuming newer and more expensive amp, but with no difference in my opinion. If 44Ks was going to break your back, 42Ks is probably going to break your back as well. There's no difference in 2 kilograms. That's just silly. There's no real benefit for me from going from a KC880 to a KC990. So why Roland? Yeah, that just doesn't make sense to me. Last, I want to discuss, and I put this as a separate category on its own because these two amps are battery powered. So Roland had the KC110, which you could operate with batteries, and that was upgraded to the KC220. The I/O exactly the same, three-channel input with an effects knob, 2-band EQ with your main outs as well, controlling the headphone volumes as well. The inputs, the I/O is exactly the same, so not much to say there. And then you had the space where you presumably would put the batteries in. Exactly the same wattage. Again, I have no idea why Roland would make a seemingly newer model of the KC110 with absolutely no difference in how much wattage it pushes out and exactly the same weight as well. That to me is just silly. I don't understand that. So my final thoughts is increased power on mostly all the amps in the series, with the exception of the KC880 that went to the 990 and the 110 that went to the 220. That doesn't make sense to me why you would make a newer amp, more expensive amp, and not at least give us 10% more wattage. That doesn't make sense to me. Dedicated aux in control, I like that. That makes sense to me. Mostly all the amps is lighter as well, with the exception of the KC110 that went to the KC220. Both of them is 7.3Ks. That doesn't make sense. One thing that I'm disappointed in, as at the making of this video, because I don't know if Roland is still going to launch a sub. With the previous generation KC amps, Roland also launched the KCW1 sub that you can plug into, and let me show you any one that's more clearer. There we go. That you can plug into any one of these amps that's had a sub out, which would then give you that bottom end. However, with the new line, they didn't bother making a new sub. Well, like I say, as at the making of this video. I don't know if that's still in the works for maybe down the line. And I have to be honest, this KCW1 was a nice touch with the previous generation. I never owned one. I think they only had this in the earlier years of the launch of the KC series of amps, and later down the line they just abandoned it, which again doesn't make sense to me. And now with the new line, they didn't even bother to update us or give us a sub in this new line. That just doesn't make sense to me. And this was actually a nice touch. You got 200 watts worth of power in a subwoofer that was specifically made to be compatible with the KC series of amps. That I thought was a very, very nice touch. Why we didn't get that with a new range of keyboard amps is beyond me. That doesn't make sense. So, the final question is it worth it to upgrade from the old series to the new series? And in my opinion, no, hell no. That doesn't make sense. There's not enough increase in power to justify selling my KC350 and buying a KC400. There's not enough weight reduction to justify selling my KC350 and going to the KC400. The difference in wattage is hovers around on average 10%. That doesn't make a difference. That doesn't justify me going from the KC350 or selling my KC350 and going over to the KC400, which is, again, an assumption, going to be a more expensive amp. It doesn't make sense to me. If I was in the market for a keyboard amp, I would actually just buy the first series of KC amps and buy it on eBay or try to get it secondhand, because that would be a good deal, because you are close enough to the newer series of amps specs for a fraction of the price. That is what would make sense to me. My opinion might not be your opinion. Let me know what you guys think about the new KC series of keyboard amps. Have a good one.